My brothers and sisters, in a world driven by interests rather than integrity, we often see alliances formed not based on values, but on convenience. When you ask, why is America supporting Pakistan against India? You must look deeper than headlines. You must look into the heart of global politics, a heart that beats not with compassion, but with calculation. Let's understand one thing clearly. Support in politics is rarely about friendship, it's about benefit. When America supports a country, it's not because they love its people. It's because they see something in return. Maybe it's strategic geography. Maybe it's military access. Maybe it's to counterbalance another rising power. But it's never purely goodwill. That's the reality of this world. India is rising. Economically, militarily, and diplomatically. It's making waves. And with that rise comes resistance. Any superpower would fear another growing superpower. And so, what do? They look for pressure points. And in South Asia, Pakistan becomes that pressure point. My brothers and sisters, when we feel targeted, we must remind ourselves of something greater. Nations rise and fall, empires support and betray. But the one who supports you consistently, without agenda, without changing sides, is your creator. Instead of crying over international politics, let's ask, what are we doing as nations, as people, as believers? Are we united? Are we just? Are we lifting each other up? Or are we tearing each other down? When outsiders support one side, it's often to create conflict on both. That's the trap. Don't fall for it. When you see one nation supported over another, know this: it's never about truth. It's always about control. Instead of waiting for global powers to validate us, let's turn inward. Build stronger communities. Speak truth. Stay united. Let your dignity speak louder than propaganda. That is how you rise, not through the approval of others, but through your own values. Remember, if they support you today, they may abandon you tomorrow. But your faith, your character, and your unity, that's what lasts forever. Political support is not about who likes whom, but about what each side stands to gain. It is often misunderstood by the public that when one country supports another, it is doing so out of compassion, loyalty, or shared values. But the reality is far more pragmatic, even cold. In the realm of international relations, there are no permanent friends or enemies, only permanent interests. Countries act based on what serves their long-term goals, economic needs, military strategies, and political ambitions. When we see America openly supporting Pakistan or any other nation, we must not look at it as an emotional choice. It is not about love for the Pakistani people or dislike for Indians. It's about where strategic benefits lie at a given moment. Governments are driven by national interest, and that interest changes with time, leadership, and global circumstances. Or is it today's ally can become tomorrow's adversary if their interests no longer align? America, like any superpower, maintains relationships that serve its position on the world stage. Supporting Pakistan in certain matters allows the US to maintain leverage in South Asia, a region marked by tension, nuclear capabilities, and proximity to key geopolitical players like China, Russia, and Iran. Pakistan offers America various advantages: geographical access to regions of conflict, intelligence cooperation, and influence in the Muslim world. These are not small factors. They form the foundation of policy decisions. Meanwhile, India's rising independence and growing influence, both economically and diplomatically, means it doesn't always bend to American interests. India wants to chart its own path. It has ties with Russia, it challenges Western narratives, and it's becoming a global voice in its own right. For the US, this means India is both an asset and a challenge. Balancing that relationship often means strengthening ties with Pakistan to create pressure, a form of strategic balance, not favoritism. This is how the game works. Nations don't wake up with emotions. They operate based on data, reports, military logistics, and economic forecasts. They calculate, they assess risks, and they move forward with what helps them most, regardless of public opinion or moral appearances. And sometimes, support for one nation is merely to influence or control another. It's a chess game, and every move is about advantage. When we, as ordinary people, nor get emotionally invested in these alliances, we must be careful not to confuse diplomacy with sincerity. Just because one country receives aid or favorable coverage doesn't mean it is more beloved or more righteous. It simply means, for now, their goals align. That can change. And it often does. History is full of examples. Allies in one war become enemies in the next. Countries that shared trade agreements today may place sanctions on each other tomorrow. Political support is fluid because interests evolve. What mattered yesterday might not matter next year. And so, alliances shift accordingly. This is not betrayal. It's how geopolitics functions. That's why people of any nation must avoid placing their dignity in the hands of foreign endorsement. If your country is being praised or supported, ask why. If it's being ignored or criticized, ask what interest is no longer being served. The narrative is never neutral. It is crafted by motives. And in this world of shifting alliances, it becomes vital to understand that real strength lies not in how many foreign allies a country has, but in how self-reliant, united, and principled its people are. A nation rooted in values, fairness, justice, and hard work will outlast any wave of political support or abandonment. So when you hear that America is supporting Pakistan or opposing India, don't look for emotional answers, look for strategic ones. Look for interests, nor look at the bigger picture. Because behind every handshake in global politics is a calculation, and behind every alliance, nor is it a reason that may have nothing to do with what we think or what we are told. America's alignment with Pakistan is strategic, not emotional. When examining this relationship, it's essential to understand that international diplomacy is never based on feelings, friendships, or historical gratitude. It is built upon a carefully calculated set of interests, risks, and rewards. The partnership between the United States and Pakistan is no exception. It stems from decades of regional dynamics, military strategies, intelligence operations, and global power shifts, all tied to America's long-term strategic objectives. Especially in South Asia and the broader Islamic world, Pakistan holds an extremely important geographical position. It shares borders with China, India, Afghanistan, and Iran. This placement has made Pakistan a valuable partner for the US, especially during the Cold War and the subsequent War on Terror. During the Soviet-Afghan War, the US used Pakistan as a frontline ally to funnel arms, aid, and intelligence to Afghan Mujahideen fighters. Pakistan's military and intelligence services played a key role in achieving American objectives in that region. This cooperation wasn't based on shared values or emotional loyalty. It was a matter of necessity. America needed access to the region, and Pakistan provided that corridor. The same dynamic reappeared after 9/11, when the US launched military operations in Afghanistan. Once again, Pakistan became a vital logistical and intelligence partner. Even today, despite periods of tension, Pakistan offers certain strategic utilities to the United States that India does not. It grants airspace, allows military transit, and maintains leverage over various regional actors, including the Taliban. These are not minor factors. For a superpower like the United States, access and influence in conflict-prone zones are critical. Pakistan's cooperation helps the US maintain a level of control and monitoring in a highly unstable region. No matter the public disagreements or occasional diplomatic clashes, the foundation of this relationship remains functional and strategic. Contrast that with India, which is emerging as a powerful, independent force on the world stage. India has strong economic growth, a large market, and increasing technological capability. It is also building its own military strength and space programs. While America sees India as an important partner, India is not always willing to act in alignment with US goals. For example, India has continued its defense relationship with Russia even amid Western sanctions. It also refuses to be pulled into military alliances that would compromise its strategic autonomy. India plays its own game. This independence is respected but also makes India less controllable from a Western standpoint. In response, the US balances its South Asian diplomacy by maintaining strong ties with Pakistan, ensuring that it has leverage on both sides of the India-Pakistan rivalry. This isn't favoritism, it's a balancing act. It allows America to stay relevant in the region and prevent any one country, especially a rapidly rising one like India, from becoming too dominant or uncontested. The presence of Pakistan in America's strategic toolkit ensures that it has options. It can apply diplomatic pressure, mediate conflicts, or simply maintain a listening post near key geopolitical hots like China and Iran. Pakistan also plays a major role in the Muslim world, often representing a large and vocal population within global Islamic dialogues. America, facing criticism in many Muslim-majority countries for its foreign policy, sees benefit in maintaining a working relationship with a nuclear-armed, Muslim-majority state that has significant influence across the Middle East and Central Asia. Supporting Pakistan in certain global forums or military ventures helps maintain channels of communication that are otherwise difficult to open in volatile regions. Furthermore, America's massive defense industry benefits from ongoing military partnerships. Arms sales, training programs, joint exercises, and intelligence sharing all flow through these strategic alliances. Pakistan has historically received billions in military and economic aid, not because the US is emotionally invested in its development, but because that aid purchases influence, access, and cooperation. Public perception often misreads these alliances as favoritism or ideological alignment, when in reality they are business-like transactions. The United States is not emotionally aligned with any country. It does not support Pakistan to offend India, nor does it abandon one for the other. It simply acts according to what maximizes its global position, its national security, and its control over key global regions. So when we see headlines about America supporting Pakistan or offering it military aid or diplomatic backing, it is not an emotional endorsement. It is a calculated move in a much bigger game, one where emotions are irrelevant and only interests matter. This is the cold, unfiltered truth of global politics. India's rise is viewed as a threat, leading to counterbalancing moves. In the world of international politics, the emergence of any nation as a regional or global power inevitably attracts attention, concern, and strategic responses from other powerful states. India's rapid ascent in economic, military, technological, and diplomatic arenas has transformed it into a significant player on the global stage. While many celebrate this development, others, particularly in the West, begin to reassess their strategies in the region, not out of hostility, but out of caution. The reality is that when a country grows powerful enough to make independent decisions, influence regional dynamics, and challenge existing global orders, it no longer remains a passive partner. It becomes a force that must be managed, balanced, and sometimes even contained. India has demonstrated an impressive trajectory of growth. Its expanding economy is among the fastest in the world. Its population, now the largest globally, provides a vast labor force and consumer market. Technologically, India is investing in innovation, digital infrastructure, and artificial intelligence. Militarily, it has built one of the largest and most capable armed forces, enhanced by a growing defense manufacturing sector and a robust nuclear deterrent. Diplomatically, India is asserting itself in multilateral forums, forming strategic partnerships, and taking positions that often reflect its national interests rather than the preferences of Western allies. This kind of assertiveness signals that India is no longer content to play a secondary role in global affairs. It is ready to lead, influence, and sometimes disagree. From the perspective of a superpower like the United States, this rise is both an opportunity and a challenge. While India offers economic collaboration, counterbalance to China, and ideological common ground as a democracy, it also introduces unpredictability. India's strategic autonomy means it will not always align with American policies. Its refusal to condemn certain nations, its defense purchases from Russia, its participation in non-Western alliances like BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and its cautious stance on Western-led initiatives. These all reflect a country that is charting its own course. This independence is admirable, but it also complicates America's influence in South Asia and the Indo-Pacific. Unlike smaller nations that may rely heavily on Western aid or protection, India is self-reliant. It negotiates on equal footing. And in geopolitics, self-reliant nations are harder to control. They disrupt predictable power balances and demand to be treated with equal respect, not patronized. This makes them potential challenges to existing global hierarchies, especially if their interests clash with those of current superpowers. As a result, to maintain leverage in the region, the US and its allies often engage in counterbalancing strategies. One such move is reinforcing ties with Pakistan. While India and Pakistan share a contentious relationship, Pakistan offers the West a convenient way to apply subtle pressure on India when needed. The support may not be overtly hostile toward India, but it serves to remind India that alternatives exist and that dominance in the region will not go unchallenged. It's a form of strategic hedging, ensuring no one power becomes too influential without checks. Additionally, by keeping Pakistan close, America ensures it has eyes, ears, and influence on India's periphery. Military cooperation, intelligence sharing, and economic aid to Pakistan can also serve as a message to India that its actions are being watched and weighed. This is not necessarily because the West opposes India, but because it prefers an environment where all powers are balanced against each other, allowing the superpower to remain the ultimate arbiter. India's assertive foreign policy has also signaled that it is not willing to blindly follow Western narratives. It abstains from votes, critiques global institutions, and calls for reforms that may reduce the dominance of traditional powers. This is a bold stance, but it also increases the desire among those powers to ensure India doesn't grow unchecked. Supporting neighboring countries or rivals, even subtly, becomes part of that containment strategy. In the bigger picture, India's rise challenges the unipolar world order dominated by the West. A strong, self-sufficient India that partners with multiple global players, including those the West may not favor, signals the beginning of a more multipolar world. This transition is unsettling for those accustomed to leading without question. So, to maintain influence, strategies shift. Alliances are recalibrated, and regional dynamics are manipulated. This is why India's rise, while beneficial in many respects, is simultaneously seen as a threat by those who fear a loss of control or influence. Counterbalancing moves, such as increased engagement with Pakistan, are not about loyalty or emotion. They are calculated steps to ensure that as India ascends, it does so within a system that still favors existing powers. It is a reminder that in international relations, every rise invites a reaction. Not because the world is unfair, but because it is strategic by nature. The global game of politics often pits nations against each other for control. This is one of the fundamental truths of international relations that many people overlook or fail to fully grasp. On the surface, countries may talk of peace, cooperation, and mutual progress, but behind closed doors, the competition for power, influence, and dominance never truly stops. Every nation seeks to secure its interests, and often, those interests clash with the ambitions of others. This competition doesn't always result in open warfare. More commonly, it plays out through economic policies, military alliances, propaganda, trade wars, cyber tactics, and subtle diplomatic maneuvers designed to weaken rivals or elevate one's own standing. Superpowers and emerging powers engage in this global chess match by dividing regions, manipulating conflicts, and investing in narratives that serve their goals. They support one nation against another, not because they believe in the morality or righteousness of a cause, but because doing so grants them leverage. A weakened rival makes space for dominance. A dependent ally ensures influence. Countries are turned into pawns, and their internal conflicts are often prolonged or inflamed, not solved, because chaos in one region means control for another. In this way, rivalries between countries are sometimes less about historical hatred and more about the invisible hands that benefit from that ongoing division. When two neighboring nations have tensions, global powers often step in under the guise of peacekeeping or partnership, but their deeper motive is to ensure neither side becomes too strong or independent. The rivalry itself is a tool. By supporting both sides to varying degrees, militarily, financially, or diplomatically, they ensure prolonged dependence on outside support. This constant tension gives the larger power room to maneuver, make deals, sell weapons, or demand loyalty in international votes and forums. The real goal is to maintain control, not only over regions, but over the political will of the nations involved. This tactic is not new. It has been used throughout history. Empires have long thrived by dividing tribes, kingdoms, or states and making each side believe the other is the enemy. While the smaller powers fight among themselves, the larger power strengthens its grip and expands its reach. This strategy has simply evolved into more sophisticated forms in modern times. Now, instead of open colonization, it's done through debt traps, defense treaties, intelligence agreements, media influence, and the funding of select political movements. In such an environment, it becomes difficult for countries to trust each other fully, and easy for foreign interests to exploit their differences. In South Asia, for instance, The long-standing friction between India and Pakistan has been shaped not only by their own histories, but also by how external powers have played roles behind the scenes. One is supported at times with military equipment, the other with trade deals, but both are watched carefully and kept from growing beyond a certain limit. Every time a diplomatic breakthrough seems possible, some incident occurs and the momentum shifts. While the people of both countries may desire peace, the political narrative is often influenced by those who benefit more from conflict than from cooperation. This doesn't only apply to rival nations. Even within regions, superpowers will encourage ideological, sectarian, or ethnic divisions to fragment unity. They provide media platforms, money, and external validation to groups that serve their narrative. The more divided a population or region becomes, the easier it is to manage and manipulate. Control doesn't always look like occupation, sometimes it looks like dependency. A country may appear sovereign, but if its policies, economy, or defense strategies are shaped by foreign influence, its independence is more symbolic than real. That is the danger of the modern political game. Nations think they are pursuing their own agendas, but they are often part of a much larger design drawn up by others. Decisions are made not just in national capitals, but in think tanks, boardrooms, and intelligence agencies of distant countries that have no connection to the people who will live with the consequences. This reality is rarely spoken of openly, but it is deeply understood by those who study power. When we see two nations pitted against each other, it is important to ask who benefits, who gains from their division, who arms them, who mediates their conflicts and under what terms. Most importantly, who controls the narrative that reaches the global audience. The answers often point to a system that feeds off division, not unity. It thrives on perpetual uncertainty, because in uncertainty lies opportunity, for control, for profit, for dominance. Understanding this reality helps explain why progress is often so slow in conflict regions. True peace is rarely in the interest of those who profit from war. True unity threatens those who rely on division to maintain their influence. And real independence requires nations to look past the illusions of friendship and favor and see the structures of control for what they are. The global game isn't about justice, it's about control. And the more clearly we see that, the better we can begin to resist its manipulation. True strength lies in unity, justice, and turning to faith, not foreign approval. Many nations today, especially those struggling with internal conflict or external pressure, often make the mistake of measuring their value by how much recognition or support they receive from more powerful countries. They chase after validation, hoping that an endorsement from a superpower will grant them legitimacy or strength. But the truth is, real power doesn't come from outside. It comes from within, from a nation's ability to stand united, to govern justly, and to remain grounded in its moral and spiritual values even when the world turns away. When a people are united, truly united, not just politically, but emotionally, culturally, and spiritually, they become impossible to break. Disagreements may still exist, but they are dealt with constructively. Differences are not exploited by outsiders but are embraced as part of a shared national identity. Such unity builds resilience. It creates a shield against propaganda, division, and manipulation. A united people cannot be easily fooled into turning on one another, nor can they be easily bought or intimidated. This kind of unity doesn't just happen overnight. It is built through trust, fairness, and a shared sense of purpose that goes beyond short-term interests. Justice is the second pillar of real strength. Without justice, unity is hollow. If the people within a nation are oppressed, unheard, or treated unequally, then no amount of foreign alliances or international deals can hold that nation together. Injustice creates cracks in the foundation of any society. It breeds anger, resentment, and eventually rebellion. But when justice prevails, when leaders serve their people with honesty and integrity, when laws are applied fairly regardless of status or background, then people have something real to stand behind. Justice brings peace, not the peace of silence, but the peace of trust. It assures every citizen that their dignity is protected and that their future is worth investing in. But perhaps the deepest and most enduring source of strength is faith. Not just religious rituals or identity, but true, living faith. The kind that connects people to a higher purpose, to divine accountability, and to a moral compass that does not shift with politics or popularity. Faith reminds us that strength is not measured by how many weapons we have or how many allies we count, but by how firmly we stand for what is right, even when we stand alone. Faith brings calm in chaos, hope in despair, and clarity in confusion. It teaches people to rely not on the shifting approval of the world, but on the unchanging truth of their Creator. The tragedy of our time is that so many nations have abandoned these pillars. They have traded unity for division, justice for corruption, and faith for political posturing. They seek approval from foreign governments, media, and institutions that do not share their values and never will. They celebrate when praised and feel defeated when ignored, as though their worth is measured by someone else's lens. But approval from outside can never replace inner strength. It is temporary, conditional, and often self-serving. One day they praise you, the next they isolate you. One moment you are an ally, the next a target. That is the nature of a world driven by interests rather than truth. Instead of begging for seats at someone else's table, nations must build their own. Instead of shaping their identity to fit the preferences of others, they must rediscover who they are, through their history, their values, and their beliefs. The most powerful nations in history were not those who were most liked by others, but those who were most true to themselves. And that truth comes from within. It is preserved through unity, expressed through justice, and rooted in faith. If a nation can achieve these three things, it will not need to fear isolation or rejection. It will not need to chase foreign investment at the cost of its own soul. It will not compromise its dignity just to be accepted by those who have no love for its people. Instead, it will attract true allies, inspire its youth, and lead by example. That is the strength that cannot be colonized, silenced, or dismantled. It is the strength that lasts long after empires fall and alliances fade. Nations must focus on self-development and resilience over external validation. This principle is critical in a world where political influence, media narratives, and economic pressures are often designed to keep developing countries dependent or insecure. The pursuit of validation from more powerful nations has led many countries to compromise their own identity, abandon long-term goals, and conform to standards that do not align with their cultural values or the actual needs of their people. They invest more energy in gaining approval from international platforms than in building the capacity and confidence of their own citizens. This chase for recognition often comes at the cost of dignity, stability, and true progress. Self-development means building institutions that serve the people with integrity, investing in education that empowers minds instead of producing dependence, and developing infrastructure that connects and elevates communities. It requires honest leadership, long-term vision, and the courage to take difficult steps even when they are unpopular. It means resisting the temptation to mirror other nations blindly, especially when those models do not fit the social, economic, or spiritual fabric of one's own land. Instead of copying external systems for the sake of acceptance, a wise nation evaluates what serves its people best and adapts according to its unique context. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to stand strong in the face of pressure, to absorb shocks without collapsing, and to continue progressing even when support is withdrawn or criticism intensifies. A resilient nation does not depend on international praise to feel successful. It doesn't fall apart when sanctions are imposed or alliances shift. Its strength comes from within, from the determination of its people, the honesty of its leadership, and the stability of its institutions. Such a nation is hard to manipulate because its self-worth isn't defined by how others perceive it. There is a dangerous illusion that global approval equals progress. Many developing countries chase high rankings, foreign aid, and glowing media coverage as if these were proof of success. They forget that these metrics can be manipulated and that the same hands that applaud today may punish tomorrow. True progress is when a child in a village can access quality education, when a citizen can trust the court system to deliver justice, when farmers, teachers, engineers, and artists can live with dignity without needing to migrate for survival. These are the signs of real development, and they are rarely celebrated by the outside world. They are quiet victories, but they are the ones that matter most. External validation is fleeting and conditional. It is often based on political trends, economic deals, or ideological alignment. A country may be praised for adopting certain policies, even if those policies harm its people in the long run. It may be celebrated for opening its markets, even if that leads to exploitation of resources and labor. When nations prioritize the approval of foreign powers over the well-being of their citizens, they risk becoming puppets in someone else's game. They lose the ability to choose freely, to speak truth, or to defend their interests when conflicts arise. History shows us that the most successful and respected nations are those that invested in themselves first. They built their own industries, nurtured their own talents, protected their values, and stood firm in the face of external pressure. They may have been mocked or boycotted in the short term, but in the end, their independence became their greatest asset. They were able to form equal partnerships, not relationships of dependence. And that dignity cannot be bought or borrowed. It must be earned through self-reliance. For a nation to grow strong, it must teach its people that their value is not based on foreign headlines or international invitations. It is rooted in their work ethic, their discipline, their unity, and their belief in something greater than themselves. The youth must be raised to take pride in their identity, not to escape it. Governments must prioritize internal reform over external praise. Communities must uplift each other instead of waiting for outside saviors. In this way, a country becomes truly free, not just on paper, but in spirit. Free to make its own choices, free to protect its interests, and free to walk its own path without fear. That kind of freedom only comes when a nation focuses on its own development and resilience, refusing to live in the shadow of foreign judgment. The world will always have something to say, but what truly matters is what a nation says to itself and what it builds with its own hands.